Welcome to the Moonlight Oracle.
Aquarius, I need you to listen to me right now, not like someone watching a video, but like someone who received a phone call in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, from someone who knows your heart better than anyone close to you does. Because what the cards showed for you today is not small. And if at any point this reading touches something you are carrying in silence, maybe it makes sense for you to stay here and follow the next messages in this space. Because what is going to happen in this conversation today is the beginning of something. Let's go. There is something happening inside you that you haven't been able to name properly yet. It's not sadness exactly, it's not anger. It is more like that feeling of carrying a full backpack without knowing for sure what is inside it. You feel the weight, you feel the tiredness, but when you try to explain to someone what you are feeling, the words seem wrong, too small. Incapable of accounting for the size of what you live through on the inside, and this has generated a distance, not only with people from the outside, but with yourself, with that version of you that was lighter, more confident, more whole. Do you remember them? Do you remember the time when you woke up with desire, when you made decisions without needing to spend the night turning every detail over in your head? That person still exists, but they kept quiet. They withdrew. They yielded space to a version of you that is more cautious, more armored, more tired of getting hurt. And what I need to tell you today is that the cards didn't come to talk about what you lost. They came to talk about what is arriving. But before that, they need to show you where you came from, because you cannot understand the turnaround without understanding the path. So breathe. We are going to take it easy, but we are going to go deep. The first card that appeared for you was the Seven of Swords. And I need to be honest with you about this card, because it is uncomfortable, and you deserve honesty. The Seven of Swords talks about a pattern that Aquarius carries for a long time, maybe without even noticing. It is the pattern of dealing with things alone, of finding solutions behind the scenes, of resolving, of bypassing, of managing, without asking for help, without showing weakness, without letting anyone see how much that is costing you. Look, Aquarius has an uncommon emotional intelligence. You see situations from an angle that most people don't even consider, and for a long time, this was a protection. You learned early on that showing what you feel is dangerous. That if you open up for real, someone is going to use that against you. That it is safer to maintain composure on the outside, even if on the inside the heart is racing. The Seven of Swords is not judging you for this. It is showing that this pattern was necessary. It protected you in moments when you had no other way out. But now it has become a prison, and you know it. Deep down, you already know that the armor you built to protect yourself has been preventing you from receiving what you want most, because nobody can get through to you for real, because you yourself cannot get through to you for real. There is a recent situation, Aquarius, where you made a lonely choice when you could have asked for help. When you deliberately didn't tell what you were feeling because you didn't want to look vulnerable, or because you didn't want to bother, or because deep down you weren't sure if the person next to you would be truly present if you showed the weight you were carrying. The card saw this, and the message that the Seven of Swords brings today is, this lonely walk has come to an end. Not because you are suddenly going to become a person who opens their heart to everyone. That is not who you are, and it doesn't need to be. But because a specific person on your path deserves to see what is underneath this armor, and you deserve to be seen. The second card is the Ten of Cups. Now I need you to stop for a second, because the Ten of Cups is one of the most beautiful cards in the deck. It talks about emotional fulfillment, true connection, a home, not necessarily a physical place, but a feeling of belonging, of being where you should be, with whom you should be, feeling what you were made to feel. And this card came in the past position. This means that you have already lived this, Aquarius, At some point in your life, you had access to this feeling, maybe in a relationship, maybe in a phase, maybe in a period when things clicked in a way that you haven't been able to replicate since, and the loss of this, or the transformation of this, was one of the most remarkable moments of your emotional history. You might not have called it loss at the time. Maybe you called it growth, necessity, inevitable change. But the heart keeps what the mind rationalizes. And somewhere inside you, the memory of this fulfillment still exists, and the silent question still exists. Why did it become so hard to find this again? Look, the Ten of Cups in the past is not a condemnation. It is not saying that you are not going to have this anymore. It is showing that you know what this fulfillment looks like. You have already tasted it, and that what is arriving in your life is a real chance to rediscover this feeling at a deeper, more mature level, more conscious than you were when you lived it for the first time. You have grown since then, and what arrives now is going to find a version of you much more capable of sustaining this love, this connection, this fulfillment. The third card is the Moon. This card. The Moon is the card of what is hidden, of what moves in the shadows, of what we feel but cannot see with clarity. It talks about illusions, buried fears, distorted perceptions, and an emotional confusion that sometimes seems to have no origin. Aquarius, there is something you are not seeing with clarity right now. It could be a situation, it could be a person, it could be yourself. The Moon came as a repeated pattern, and this is important. Because this means that you have a cycle of deluding yourself, of not wanting to see the reality of certain things, of preferring the comfort of a version of the story that is not completely true. I know this can be hard to hear, but the Moon is not saying that you are wrong or that you are naive. It is saying that you have such a great sensitivity that sometimes reality that is too brutal is painful to face, and so you build narratives that protect your heart from things it is not ready to process. There is an area of your life right now where you are doing this, where you are looking at a situation and seeing what you want to be true instead of seeing what is. It could be in relation to a person you like very much but who is not treating you the way you deserve, and you keep finding justifications. It could be in relation to a project, a job, a choice you made, and that deep down you know needs to be reviewed. It could be in relation to a feeling you have been repressing, because if you allow yourself to feel for real, you will have to act, and the action will cost something. The Moon asks that you allow yourself to see with clarity. Not with judgment, not with hardness toward yourself, but with honesty. Because what you see when the mist clears is going to change everything. Now I need to pause here for a moment. Because this reading is touching on very deep layers, and sometimes when we start to see patterns and to understand where they came from, the question arises, but why does this repeat? Why do I attract these situations? Why does my heart seem to follow routes that I myself recognize but cannot deviate from? And look, part of this has to do with the moment you are living. But part has to do with who you are at the deepest level, with your natal configuration, with the energies that shape the way you relate, how you decide, how you love. The birth chart is a tool that I use with much seriousness, precisely because it reveals these patterns in a precise way. Not as a fixed destiny, but as a map of your temperament, your tendencies, your gifts, and challenges. When you understand your chart, you begin to understand why certain experiences repeat and what you can do differently. If you haven't explored your natal chart in depth yet, maybe this is a valuable moment to do so. Not as an escape, but as a tool for real self-knowledge. But let's continue, because the next cards are where everything changes. The fourth card is Judgment. And when Judgment appears, Aquarius, something inside me lights up, because this card is not about being judged. It is about the awakening, about the calling, about that moment when something inside you resonates in a way so deep that you can no longer pretend you didn't hear it. Judgment came in the position of hidden truth. This means that there is something you haven't allowed yourself to admit yet, but that deep down you already know. A truth about yourself, about what you want, about who you are, about what needs to change. And this truth is asking to be recognized. Not to be announced out loud to everyone, not to be performed, but to be honored by you in the first place. Look, judgment has an energy of new beginning, not of a new beginning as if the past hadn't happened, but of a new beginning as someone who wakes up from a dream and realizes it is morning, that it is a new day, that it is possible to choose differently today. You are being called to a version of yourself that you caught a glimpse of, but haven't fully inhabited yet. A version more aligned, more whole, more courageous to be who you are without apologizing. And judgment says that you are ready, more than you imagine. The fifth card is the Ace of Wands. Now yes, Aquarius, the Ace of Wands is pure energy. It is beginning. It is ignition. It is that spark you feel when something truly awakens inside you, not as an obligation, not as a duty, but as a genuine desire, as fire, as life. This card came as the turnaround. And the message is direct. Something new is being born in your life. An idea, an opportunity, an energy that is still in its rawest, most initial form, but that has an immense power. You might have already felt this, that spark of something, that thought that appears before sleeping, or in a moment of silence where you imagine a version of your life different from the one you are living today, where something you always wanted to do suddenly seems more possible than impossible. This is the Ace of Wands, and the message it brings is, do not put out this spark. Do not rationalize it to death. Do not hand it over for evaluation to people who live with fear. Because what is being born now in you is legitimate. It is real, and it has the potential to become one of the most transformative things you have ever built. The only danger of the Ace of Wands is letting the window pass, because initial energy is powerful, but it needs movement. It needs you to take the first step, even if it is a small step, even if you don't know the second one yet. You take this step, Aquarius, and life meets you on the way. And now we come to the sixth and last card, the card of final direction, the star. The star. You know when you have been in the dark for so long that you almost forget what light is like? And then you see a spark way out there and something inside you recognizes it before understanding? That is how the star arrives. The star is the card of renewal, of hope that is not naive. It is hope that has already gone through the fire and survived. It is the confidence of someone who went to the bottom and came back. It is the serenity of someone who can finally rest after a long crossing. And it came as your final direction. This means that the destination of this entire journey, of everything you carried, of everything you processed, of everything you lived, is peace. It is renewal. It is a place inside you where you can land. Aquarius, I need you to understand the weight of what I am saying. You went through periods of doubt, periods when it seemed like things were never going to fit, when the path was too long, the tiredness was too deep, the loneliness was too silent. The star does not erase that, but it says that it had a purpose, that you didn't carry that weight for nothing, that each layer you crossed made you a deeper person, more real, more capable of receiving what is coming. And what is coming, Aquarius, is beautiful. Not because it is going to be perfect, not because it is going to be easy, but because it is going to be true. It is going to be aligned. It is going to be you, for real, living a life that makes sense to you. The star asks that you trust, not blindly, not without discernment, but with the quiet courage of someone who has already proven to themselves that they can cross what needs to be crossed, and that, on the other side, there is light. You are not at the beginning of this story, Aquarius. You are at the turnaround. Look, I want you to pause for a second now, because we covered a lot of ground together in this reading, and I want you to feel the complete arc of what the cards showed. We started with the Seven of Swords, the learned loneliness, the armor built out of necessity, the pattern of carrying alone what didn't need to be carried alone. Then we came to the Ten of Cups in the past, the fulfillment that you knew, which lives in your emotional memory as a reference of what is possible, and which is about to be rediscovered in an even more mature version. The moon brought the veils, the illusions, the blind spots. The emotional confusion that makes you see what you want instead of what is, a pattern that now you are being invited to transcend. Judgment revealed the truth that you already knew but haven't dared to name completely yet. The call to your most authentic and courageous version. The Ace of Wands brought the fire of the beginning, the spark of something new that is already alive inside you and that asks for movement, action, courage to take the first step. And the Star closed everything with the most beautiful image I could offer you: deserved renewal, conquered peace, an open sky after a long crossing. This is your moment, Aquarius. Not because external circumstances are suddenly going to organize themselves the way you want, but because something inside you is reorganizing itself. Something is finding its axis. Something is waking up for good. And when a person's center is firm, when they know who they are, what they want, what they will tolerate, and what they won't anymore, the world around eventually mirrors that, not from day to night, but with a consistency that becomes undeniable. Before finishing, I need to tell you one last thing. You have a rare intelligence. Aquarius carries a capacity to think, to analyze, to see connections that most people cannot, and that is a huge gift. But sometimes this gift turns into an obstacle, because you think so much that you distance yourself from feeling. You analyze so much that you postpone acting. You understand so much that sometimes you isolate yourself in your own comprehension, as if understanding were enough when what life asks for is presence, movement, contact. The cards of today are not asking you to be less intelligent. They are asking you to also be courageous. That you use all this intelligence at the service of a life that you really chose, not one that you kept building by elimination, for safety, for fear of daring. You were born for more, Aquarius, not in the sense that what you have now has no value, but in the sense that there is a version of your life where you are more whole, more alive, more you. And it is not impossible. It is around the next corner. The star is lit. You just need to raise your eyes. If this reading touched something in you, if at any moment you felt that sting of recognition, that feeling of "this spoke exactly to what I am living," comment down below, "I receive." Let this energy circulate. Let this message know that it arrived where it needed to arrive. And if you want to keep receiving these readings, because there is much more message arriving for Aquarius in the next few days, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Because the next readings are going to continue from where this one left off. Aquarius, I am glad you were here today. Take care of yourself. With affection,